Previously on Spenelli Speaks. Today, you all selected young Jane Austen becoming a writer. Hi everyone, Danny here. Welcome back to my channel. Today is July 4th and the fourth day of our 31 days of book reviews. And in my neck of the woods, it is also Independence Day. So we actually celebrated yesterday with some family out on the lake, which was wonderful. It was a beautiful day, a nice breeze, and the water was great. There were a ton of lake flies, which were really gross, but they don't bite or anything, so you just kind of slowly flick them away and they go. But it was still gross. But anywho, it is the fourth day of our book reviews, and today all of your votes were pretty unanimous for Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. This book I actually did as a buddy read with Christina over at Knitting Books, etc. We read this together over a course of a month, and I'm glad we had that much time, because this was definitely a book that I would not have been able to power through. There were a lot of times that I really just needed to put this book down. And then I also read it with another friend of mine who I actually is like a real life person. One of my college friends. So we read this together as well. So I had a little bit of different buddy readers at the same time, but also unanimous for us is how dry this book is. So Christine and I really found that though the book was super interesting, it wasn't a book that we were, racing to get back to read the next section. And like I said, because the writing was so dry. And my other friend who I read it with thought the same thing, and she listened to it as an audiobook, and she said there were times where she just glazed over and she's like, oh, I have to rewind because I have no idea what I just read. So very dry. Now let's go back to that interesting part. Let's tell you what the book is about. So in The Left Hand of Darkness, this is a sci-fi book. Sci-fi meaning this takes place basically on a different planet. There's a little bit of space travel, but just the reference of spaceships and whatnot doesn't really go through like what it takes to do space travel. But we meet the narrator, who his name is like Genly I or something, like Genly I. I is his last name or surname, and he is like an intergalactic like political figure. He kind of comes to figure out what a planet is all about and tries to get them to be part of like an intergalactic treaty with his planet, and he's really bad at it. He doesn't really mingle well with the natives, and he doesn't really understand their way of life. And he doesn't really, I guess he doesn't really accept it as a norm or as just a regular everyday kind of thing, because his society is so different, which is very apt to how people sometimes live today. Someone who is different from you. Some people don't accept those kinds of things, which, I mean, okay. But so he is on this planet named Winter. Pretty sure that's what it was called. And he interacts with these natives who are by atomical, I think is the word. Meaning they can change between genders. So depending on their mating cycle, which is called like chemering or something like that, they can either be the male part or the female part, depending on what role they are playing in their mating cycle. So sometimes they have sired children as a male, and then sometimes they have conceived the child as a female. And this Genly, and they all call him Genry because they can't get the L sound, which he brings up a couple of times, doesn't get it. So he essentially keeps referring to this one character as a he, even though they are currently female, technically, by their mating cycle. Anywho, it gets all very confusing because he uses he uses the same pronoun, even though he is referring to this person during their female. It's all very confusing because he makes it very confusing, which I think is the point. The point of being like, why are you making this so confusing? When they're just a person and this is their way of life and this is how they have created multiple generations of their people, and it all works. There's no war here. There's no rape or incest. Well, there is incest actually. Anywho, but it's law in some areas that you cannot have incest, which brings us to another character called Estraven, who there's kind of like a love interest there between this Genly and this Estraven. And very, very impactful relationship because they end up on this giant journey after he's taken in as like a prisoner in a war camp, which is weird because if there's no war, then why is there a war camp? This is so confusing, this book. But I think it's confusing because the writing is so darn dry that your brain just glazes over several times in reading, and I think you just miss whole pockets of the book. The only pieces of the book that I absolutely loved were these small interludes where they were almost like oral histories of this planet. So they were like talking about different things that have happened hundreds of years ago, or like different kind of folklore pieces, and those were really interesting, but those were also only about 4 pages long. So in those pieces I was like, ooh, 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 and then I got to the next part and I was like, oh, it's back to this dude who's super boring and doesn't know anything and is kind of annoying. He really, and that's the thing too, there was real no depth of character there. Like I didn't feel like I cared at all about him. I did care a lot about Estraven because I felt like he was so much more complex and so much more giving and compassionate and, you know, just such a dynamic character. And then, you know, his whole story was so fascinating and just something that you really wanted to like root for him. And it was like, why can't we just learn more about you? And like this Genly can just like go away because there's just no complexity to him. Now, should you read this book? Do you like sci-fi? Do you like slow burns? Do you like really complex writing that is super dry and packs a lot of information in it? Then this is the book for you. If you're just jumping into sci-fi, if you are, you know, tipping your toe in and you want to see a little bit of Ursula K. Le Guin, don't start here. I have only ever read snippets of Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea trilogy, and I loved that. So I'm not letting Ursula K. Le Guin go, but if you are starting with an Ursula K. Le Guin, I don't know that I would recommend starting with this book. It's super dry. The narrator makes things super confusing. And realistically, the only thing that kept me going in this book is the fact that I was so interested in what the heck is this book about? Like, what is going to happen? And the ending itself, I did like. And typically it's an ending that I wouldn't like. I'd be like, oh, that's annoying. But with the whole of this entire story, I liked it a lot. So do I regret reading this? Absolutely not. I think it is well written, though dry, innovative, makes you think. It had a lot of interludes that I really enjoyed. The world building, the complex ideas, the character of Estraven I really enjoyed. Those things I liked. Overall, boy, I don't know that I would have been able to read this book in a month had I not had buddy reads with me. I would have had to like take an entire year to like, do I really want to come back to this book? So I am happy that I read it, but you have been warned. Worth it because it's something different, but boy, dry as a bone. So I'm sorry. I thought this was going to be a lot better than it was. So I was surprised at how much I was kind of like on the fence about this one. So that said, let's move on and find out what we are going to be reviewing tomorrow. And as we have since the beginning, it'll be your choice. So the two books you have to vote on for tomorrow are two books that I have recently read, one of which I was supposed to read last year and I just never got to, but I ended up reading it with my book club this year. And that is Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg. So that's your choice number one. So if you are interested in Fannie Flagg's Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, go ahead and comment below with your vote. Or we're going to take a look at Octavia E. Butler's Kindred. If you're interested in hearing a review on this book, make sure you go ahead and vote for Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So two very good books. We have Kindred or Fried Green Tomatoes for your votes tomorrow. Go ahead and let me know in the comments. I'm excited to see what you all vote on. It's been super fun for me, so I truly appreciate you interacting with me and choosing your own review. So until next time, I hope you all are reading something great, taking care, and staying safe. And as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading and happy Independence Day. Bye now.